This might make me sound stupid or just late to the game, but low power mode on MacBooks works differently than I thought. And since I've started using it the past few months, the actual difference it makes really surprised me. Now, I knew that low power mode existed, I just never consistently used it. And that's not because it's not effective. It very much so is, as I'll show in some real life types of tests I do later. I always assumed, like on iPhones, you only really use low power mode when your battery's low and you want to get as much life as you can out of like the final 20%. So being an iPhone user and also just seeing the icon turn yellow, that just psychologically signaled to me that it's crippling my machine in exchange for better battery life. But that's actually not the whole picture. On the iPhone, low power mode heavily cuts back on peak performance, something like the 120 Hz ProMotion display, background app refreshing, iCloud syncing, brightness, automatically turning off your screen after 30 seconds, a bunch of things like that. It does noticeably feel like it's slowing down your phone, because it is. What's aggressively prioritized is your battery lasting as long as possible, not the performance of your phone. But when you flip it on your MacBook, it does cut back the peak performance a little bit. It reduces the sustained power draw from both your CPU and GPU, reduces the fan and active cooling, and background tasks are tuned down a bit. It also does limit the refresh rate to 60 Hz on MacBook Pros. More importantly, what's not affected is if you have multiple desktops or windows that you're switching between or navigating through Finder, you'll likely not notice a difference from high power mode, since on low power mode, things like RAM are not restricted at all. And I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're on a MacBook, you're more likely to need better sustained performance no matter what you're working on, even if you're just organizing some files. Like, I would much rather have my MacBook die when I'm in the middle of working, rather than my phone die when I need it to navigate or call for help or play doodle jump, you know, like the most important things. But to give you an idea of how much battery it actually saved and what the difference of performance looks like, I have a couple different tests of day-to-day tasks to heavier creative tasks, and even trying to push my MacBook as hard as possible. And I'm gonna start with the regular, lighter tasks that I am constantly doing. Like, it could be anything from reading rumored tech releases to responding to comments, responding to emails, typing out some bullet points or a shot list for my videos, organizing files, anything along those lines. And for that, maybe 85% of the time, I'm using my M4 Max MacBook, which has a lot of power. But to get the exact opposite perspective, I also run some of these tests with my MacBook Neo, which I'm using maybe 15% of the time, and it's blue. That's pretty cool. Now, only MacBook Pros have high power mode and automatic mode, but all MacBooks have low power mode. And although I have a feeling you'll be able to deduce it for yourself after seeing these tests, at the end I will talk about when is the best time to use low power mode. Now, one of the first things I like to do is run a 4K 3-hour YouTube video on just like a normal brightness and seeing how much the battery drops. With the Max and Neo both on 100% charge, starting on normal and high power mode for each, after 3 hours, the Max was at 79% and the Neo was at 77%. I should add that this is to compare each device with and without low power mode on, not the devices between each other. The 16-inch MacBook has a much bigger battery. I think it's almost 3 times the size as the Neos. So, I mean, I am interested to see the difference, but it is not a fair comparison. A bit later, I flipped them both into low power mode and charged them back up to 100%. And after another 3 hours, the M4 Max dropped to 81% and the Neo to 76%. So essentially no difference on the Neo and only a minor 2% battery difference with the M4 Max. I am curious though how this will compare to the more demanding tasks that I'll be trying later. And just to get some more data here with the lighter ends of tasks, with my M4 Max on 80% battery and high power mode, after 1 hour of planning a video with things like Spotify, couple tabs open, and Craft, which is the app I was working in, it drained 14%. After that though, I dropped it into low power mode and worked for another whole hour, and that dropped it down by 10%. And I should also add, there was absolutely no performance difference. I could have had it on high power mode and it would have been the exact same. So having low power mode on, there's nothing to lose but battery life to gain. Or I guess lose less of. So for this next test, I'm gonna be working in the video editing software, which is where most of the process is done, and then also test exporting it, which is where the laptop is pushed the hardest. And I know not everyone edits videos. This is really the only high demanding task that I know how to do and that I do, but I think this should still be a decent benchmark to show the difference between high and low power mode. And I'm actually gonna be doing the exporting test first, because this is kind of what made me realize I wanted to make this video. About a week ago, there was a heat wave where I live, and I knew there was a possibility of losing power. And I did, in fact, lose power. Now, that was because someone crashed into a telephone pole, not because of the heat, but anyways, I was mid-edit, and I usually cap my MacBook's charge at 80% just to kind of maintain the best battery health. So to preserve that 80% as much as possible, I immediately threw it in low power mode, and I did finish the edit, but I did need to export it out to watch it over. So exporting out that 4K 24 frame, 15-minute long video took about 17.5 minutes and dropped the battery from 57% to 47%. So 10% battery drop for a 15-minute video, that's pretty good. I'll also note that the fans did not kick up. When it's on auto or especially high power mode, those things are blazing during video exports, which is, I mean, fair. And yesterday, to test the difference between the power modes of not only how long it took, but the battery drain, I exported the same video with the same settings in auto and high power mode, as well as low power mode again. And these are the results that I got. Low power mode is clearly the best on battery life and the slowest on export speeds, which I don't think's a bad thing. It's a very clear trade-off. If there's a moment like I was in where you value battery life over the time it takes to export something, well, you can just throw it on low power mode. Now, obviously high power mode is the fastest, but what I did find interesting is the battery percentage drained between auto and high is essentially the same, while high power mode was able to export it a whole minute faster. Now, I will say your results may vary. I mean, the M4 Max is so incredibly powerful that even the export speeds on low power mode, for me, that's totally a reasonable number. But exporting is such a small percentage of the time spent video editing, so I wanted to test what it's like, performance-wise specifically, working in the software. And this is where I've noticed the biggest differences, especially since I am the most productive, lazy person ever. I'm always editing on this couch or on my bed or, you know, on battery life. So how much battery does it drain from actively editing on high power mode compared to low power mode? Well, first, as far as editing performance on low power mode, I did occasionally notice a little hiccup, like a little lag when I hit pause or play. Sometimes moving a few clips around, there's a little bit of a stutter, but 95% of the time, cutting through things, it was the exact same as it would be on high power mode. But there is an exception, and that is when I'm adjusting the colors. I notice almost immediately when I bring up the scopes, which if you don't know, it shows the live color and exposure information of whatever frame of video I'm on. I did notice when I'm playing it back with that up on low power mode, it can get a bit choppy. Sometimes when I'm adding new color effect layers or specifically adjusting a mask, it does take a second. But you know, if you take a step back and not hyperfixate on little details, it is by no means unusable. Again, that could be because it's an M4 Max. If you're having like a slightly less powerful MacBook to begin with, you might notice more of a difference. Now, as far as battery life, 1 hour of editing dropped it from 80% to 59% on high power mode, and another hour of editing on low power mode later dropped it from 58% to 44%. So with it dropping 21% on high power mode and 14% on low, you're saving much more battery on tasks like these compared to something like watching a YouTube video. So when should you use low power mode? Well, I actually think the better question is, when should you not use it? I think if you're plugged into power, or you need a speed or performance boost, or you just value speed over your battery life, then don't have low power mode on. Other than that, I think low power mode should almost be on by default. For all regular, lighter kind of admin types of tasks, you're getting the same exact feeling of performance on low power mode. For more demanding tasks, there is a chance you will notice a difference. But in my experience, again, I have an M4 Max, my results might be skewed. It wasn't that noticeable. Things like RAM are not limited when you're on low power mode. Even on my MacBook Neo, I can have 5 tabs open, Spotify playing, a document pulled up, and swiping between all the desktops, and you'll still be saving battery without any downside that you wouldn't regularly have on the Neo. I'd even make the case, if you're not on a battery crunch where you need it to last as long as possible, you should still have low power mode on. Over time, that 10 to 15% of battery that you're saving day to day could add up to potentially hundreds of full battery cycles. There's a very real chance that I'm just tardy to the party on this, but for me, low power mode is my default choice when I'm unplugged. So hopefully this is helpful for at least one person, and I didn't make myself look incredibly stupid, but thank you for watching and feel free to subscribe for more.